I studied GUWEIZ art style for 30 days, and if you clicked on this video, you've probably also spent ages studying artists you admire, hoping to improve. But it doesn't work if you don't know how to study other artists correctly, and copying is not how you do it. In this series, I studied Wulop, Zin Chin, Ramon Nunez, Loish, and Sam Does Art. I even received personal feedback from Ramon.
Filippo, how you doing?
Each time, I pick one artwork and recreate it using the artist's exact process, with my own original characters. I call this the character swap. But this time with GUWEIZ it was different. I still bought his book, I still joined his Patreon, I still attempted a character swap. But after over 15 hours of work, when I had just a few hours to finish it off, I stopped. And it's not because I was stuck or because it was too hard or anything like that. It was because I realized something that is usually very hard to figure out. I was studying, sure, but I wasn't learning. In this video, I will still share everything I uncovered about GUWEIZ, of course, his process, his brushes, and all of his subtle choices that make his art style so unique. But if you stay with me until the end, you will get something even more valuable. Because what this really turned into is a lesson about knowing when to stop studying and how to start building. I hope you enjoyed the experience, and let's go. I'm starting with his art book this time, because right on the cover you can already see the reasons I wanted to study his style. It's this moody, mainly grey palette that has some soft shadows, always a small but powerful accent, usually of saturated yellow. This is what made me stop scrolling when I saw his work for the first time. And if I had to write down the signature recipe that makes a GUWEIZ style, it would go something like this. A strong female character, usually a warrior of sorts, is still, quietly waiting before the action starts or right after it ended. It's usually raining, snowing, or in any case, we are in a low-light environment where everything is desaturated with grays, blacks that can be on the blue, on the green, or even on the red side of the spectrum, but that are always accompanied by at least one small object that emanates warm, bright, and saturated light. It's usually earrings or lamps, but also eyes and fireflies. He also deviates from this recipe, exploring variations of it from time to time, but overall this is his signature style. And this book is not just a portfolio of his work. It has a unique feature that takes the front seat compared to other art books that I covered in previous videos. Like in Loish and in Sam's books, this one still includes classic sections like the early days, charting out his artistic development, or the workflow section where he dissects the making of a specific artwork step by step. Kind of like a tutorial. But every couple of pages what you will find is actually a conversation. Many reflections on topics like discipline, productivity, resilience, or validation. What he covers is as much technical as it is emotional. And that's smart. Because whether we like to admit it or not, your art journey is only marginally about developing your technical skills. Most of it is about cultivating the practice, the habit of making art. Learning how to make it an integral part of how you live your life. So there's a lot of value in reading the point of view of artists you admire on these topics. And you don't really have to agree with what they're saying either. No one's opinions is to be taken without challenging it. For example, in this page about style evolution, he writes that he changed his perspective on how style comes to be. He believed that he could build a style by copying artists he admired and changing a few things, like what I'm doing right now. But that he discovered that style isn't something that you can just decide to have. He says that studying the style of other artists is not helpful in the long term. I quote, "This isn't to say that we should completely avoid learning from those better at the craft, but it's worth being aware of the limitation of this method." He's referring to studying other artists. As it's a very common trap that less experienced artists often mistake for a shortcut. And I get it, I really do. Because it's easy to just copy hoping it sticks. But the solution is not to let go and wait for the style to emerge. That sounds romantic, but in reality it's just another more passive trap. Waiting for a style to naturally emerge is like hoping that a great recipe will accidentally appear on your plate without learning to cook. Yes, with enough time, trial and error, something will eventually start to feel like yours, but not only it might take a decade, you won't even understand what you've done and why it works. The reality is nuanced, and nuance is hard. That's why the lazy advice comes easy. Great chefs learn other recipes before they invent their own. And if you're paying attention not just to taste, but also to what each ingredient does, then you start to understand the logic behind the recipe. So yeah, I disagree. I think it's important to take an active approach to the way that you learn and develop your skills. And style is a skill. It's just a very hard one to unlock. So please, don't wait around hoping your style will just emerge. If finding your art style actually matters to you, then go after it, with strategy and intention. Because taking agency over your path is not a shortcut, it's the whole point. The strategy I've come up for my own path is this. I've mapped it all out in this interactive roadmap, which is free to access, and almost 200 people have explored it already and helped me improve it, which is super cool. GUWEIZ is the last artist that I'm planning to study before testing my own resulting art style, but I received so many suggestions of other artists to cover that I might do more episodes of this series in the future. So if you have a favorite artist that you'd like me to study, comment it below and I'll do my best. For now, GUWEIZ is the last one, and to get started with the character swap, I first have to dive deeper into his Patreon. Joining an artist's Patreon is not just about supporting them for me, it's about getting a front row seat to their creative process. In his case, he shares his finished artworks in 4K, but he also has a folder where you can find his current sketches and work in progress, so you can see what he's working on at the moment. I've never seen other artists do that. It's very cool. But I'm here for his process videos. I want to see him break down how he's achieved his signature look. Surprisingly though, there is not much of his signature style in here. Of 87 process videos, only a handful have the palette and mood that I was looking for. There's a much broader range of work here. Some are quite different from the style that first drew me in, which turns out to be reserved for his fantasy work. While his non-fantasy pieces, they keep a dark and moody vibe still, always with a female character before or after a meaningful action has happened, except this outlier here. But they're usually indoors, with either lots of saturated reds or lots of neon lights. And that's the thing about most artists, there's always more beneath the surface, there's more nuance, there's more exploration, more sides to the work than the average viewer will ever know. But here's the paradox. If you show too much range too soon, people get confused. They don't know what you're about. So the job of an art style, especially in the context of social media, is to simplify, to act like a filter. A good style doesn't just look good, it communicates quickly. It tells people, here's the feeling that you can expect from it. And that's what draws them in. But once they're in, once someone becomes a fan, then the rules change. Now they want to see the rest, the experiments, the one-off, and the weird personal pieces that have often nothing to do with the rest of your work. And Patreon is a natural home for this hidden layer, a space where an artist can be more than just their most recognizable style. And I do it as well, but I do it with my Monday newsletter. That's where I share what's going on behind the scenes of this channel. The reality of being an average person trying to balance a full-time job, a deep love for drawing, and this ambition to share what I learn with videos that are more than just a talking head. And the second layer of content only makes sense if you've already seen a few of my videos, if you're already connected with my style and you're curious about what's underneath. And that's exactly how I feel about GUWEIZ on Patreon. He talks a lot in his process videos, and like in his book, he shares his struggles, his strategies and his opinions, making it all more personal and more valuable. But I came here with a clear goal in mind, to experience his signature style. So even though I considered a couple of options, like this one and this one, I didn't repeat the error that I did with Samdo's art, and I picked a piece that matched his iconic look. I sketched out a couple of options to see how my own characters could fit in, keeping the core composition as much as possible. And while I'm showing you the first few hours of work, I wanted to ask you if you spotted the secret riddle that I hid earlier in this video. If you did find it, comment your solution and make sure you've subscribed, because not only all winners will receive a signed artwork from me, but one of you will also get a 1-month membership of GUWEIZ Patreon, the same tier I have, for free. Well, sponsored by me. Alright, so I've got my character holding his cat chopstick, wearing his VR headset called Goggles, which when activated becomes a tiger, so he's here. And that alone makes it impossible for me to just copy the reference. I have to paint my own thing while still trying to follow the 6 steps that GUWEIZ lays out for his process. The first 3 are all about locking in the pose and the value composition. Step 4 is what I call a clean draft or a rough final, depending on how you look at it. And then comes step 5 and 6, the rendering phases. Painfully cleaning the edges to make the volumes more believable, layering in the textures and some details, and finally adding the snowfall and the glow effect. But by the time I start cleaning up the edges, I'm already 15 hours in, which for me actually means more than 3 calendar weeks, because I barely manage 5 hours a week for making art. So this is the real question. Should I push through and polish this until I'm happy? Or should I stop it here, bag the learning and move on? There's no objectively right answer to this, unfortunately, but the truth is, I don't like to leave things unfinished. But I have to be ruthless with my time. Yes, I'm not able to do this full time, but there is no point for me doing this at all if I'm not happy. So the definition of finished needs to change. It cannot mean making it look like I want. It has to mean getting the learning I want. So yeah, under this new definition, this piece is finished, because what I wanted was to experience his signature palette, and I've already done that. Now it's the time to take everything I've learned from all these 6 artists that I studied in this series, and I've already updated the interactive roadmap with all the process steps that I want to keep and to avoid, so that finally, after 6 months of hard work, I can put them all together to result in my own new art style. In the next video, I will put this art style to the test. I'll be remaking the original artwork that I created at the start of this journey, but this time using a process that is entirely mine. So yeah, 6 months to get to this moment. Was it all a waste of time, or will it finally lead me to the style that I've been searching for? I'm excited to find out, and I'll see you there. Whew. Will it finally find your art style? Will it finally find your art style? Am I even in focus? Oh shit.